Hi everyone. Today I am sitting down with Perry Boyle, who's a former head of investment strategy at Point 72, a guy who's been in the trenches of high stakes finance, coaching over 100 portfolio managers on performance, discipline, and mindset. He's gone from managing billions to mentoring leaders, and I'm very excited to dig into the lessons he's learned along the way. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'll let you introduce yourself. You have an amazing story, and you would be the best person to give that introduction.
Oh, well, where do I begin? You know, I I built most of my career in finance. So I started out in investment banking, and then I shifted to equity research. I was a sell side stock analyst for a number of years, and then I got sucked up into management, and I ended up helping found an investment bank, Thomas Weisel Partners, and running the equity research department there. I left there in 2004 to join what was then SAC Capital, thinking I might be there for a year, 2 years. And 15 years later, I was still there. So I had a very long run there. And we built that from a medium sized hedge fund into one of the largest global players in long short equities. And then I retired in 2019 to Sun Valley, Idaho, and focused more on public service things. For the past 8 or 9 years, I've been on the board of the BOMA project, BOMA.NGO, 6 years as chairman of that. And BOMA is a poverty graduation program provider in Africa. And we built that up from being a US based nonprofit into the largest African provider of poverty graduation programs. And so I just stepped out of the chair to become vice chair at the end of last year. And then about a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, when Russia decided to roll into Ukraine, sitting here, I live in Sun Valley, Idaho, literally in the middle of nowhere. And I'm sitting here and I'm just getting more and more upset, waiting for the US to put Russia back in its box and live up to its international obligations. And the US decided not to do that. So I was thinking, well, I'm retired. My kids are grown. My wife's taken care of. I need to get involved. And so I actually applied to fight in Ukraine with the International Legion. I filled out the application. I don't speak Ukrainian. I've never been in the military. I'd never been to Ukraine. I have no ties to Ukraine. I'm afraid of guns, but I figured they'd make me a cook or an ambulance driver or something. And they rejected me, hurt my feelings. But they bothered to look me up on LinkedIn, saw that I knew something about capital markets. Ukraine needs a lot of capital, and they asked me to help build up capital investment in the defense industry in Ukraine. And so a year ago, I founded MITS Capital, MITS, MITS. I'm not pronouncing that correctly in Ukrainian, but it means might in Ukrainian, with two Ukrainian partners. And in the past year, we've become one of the largest defense technology investors in Ukraine. We run MITS Accelerator in partnership with the American University in Ukraine, in Kyiv. American University Kyiv is the only U.S. style graduate school in Ukraine, and we run a Y Combinator style defense tech startup accelerator. So companies apply. We give them seed capital and a 3-month boot camp in exchange for an equity interest in the company. We put 2 cohorts through that. We'll put a third through in the summer. And through that process, we built up a portfolio of 13 companies going to 20 companies in Ukraine's defense technology base. Um, Alongside of that, we've also built up an investment banking advisory arm where we have about a half dozen Ukrainian defense companies as clients. They range between $50 and $500 million in enterprise value. And then we are starting up a deep tech research lab, MITS lab, to work on things like AI applications, energy weapons, things like that. So, I went from being an investment banker to a stock guy, from the sell side to the buy side, to retired, to a defense technology entrepreneur in Ukraine, of all places. So it's been an interesting path.
Yeah, definitely. I am as a Ukrainian immigrant who came to the States. Well, this story is absolutely interesting because you as a person who have been in the Wall Street world and worked with like high stakes environments with people at the top. You decided to join the war with Russia on the other side of the world as a soldier, and they rejected you, which might have been a good thing because now you're running this whole defense accelerator, which probably provides thousands x more value as than if you were a cook or a doctor at the Ukrainian army. So maybe that turned out to be a good thing. Yeah, that's fascinating to hear. Definitely.
Well, I hope so. I hope I am helping move the needle a little bit. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll probably explore this in more detail a little bit down the road today. But I I was doing a little bit of a research on what you did, and what was very interesting to me is how you deal with uncertainty and high stakes environments. From what I've seen, you embraced some of the philosophies that might be very applicable to those situations. My favorite book is. Uh, the Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, which is all about Stoicism. And from what I understand, um, you have a mindset and a philosophy close to that. So I'd love to hear your opinion on how to deal with uncertainty, high stakes environments, how to stay grounded and not your emotions overrun yourself.
Well, you're giving me more credit, I think, than I deserve. I wish I could keep my emotions in check. I'm actually a fairly emotional person, and which made me a very poor portfolio manager. Actually, like analytically, I understand it all, and but what you are going to go through periods where you lose money, and I was not emotionally good in those situations. Um, and I think I am a great example of the proverb, those who can't teach, if you've ever heard that one, because I think I was a much better portfolio coach than I was as a portfolio manager. But I could be a good coach because I had sat in their seat, and I could appreciate the stress that they were under, and I could see uh, what kinds of traits led to success in that role. And then I could take that and use that to hire for what you can't teach. Um, and so if you look at, my initial career, I was not really interested in being a team player. I went into roles where individual performance drove your career, which was wrong because that's rarely the case. In almost every situation someone's in, the ability to work with other people is how you play your best game. And humanity's superpower is our ability to work together to achieve more collectively than we could individually, right? And I it took me a long time to learn that. So I worked in investment banking where you work in very small teams, and then I worked in equity research where it was me and one or two other people working for me, just very small teams, and where it was really the Perry Boyle show, right? And then I got into a situation where I worked in a department where I didn't think it was particularly well run, and I thought I could do a better job. And so I raised my hand and I said, "Hey, put me in the driver's seat. Give me 2 years in this. I will fix it, and then I can go back to being an individual player." Um, and from that point, I've been essentially a professional manager for the rest of my career because I found that I actually take pleasure in the success of other people. And I think that that's really important if you're in a leadership and or coaching role. If you can't take pleasure in the success of other people, you're not going to be that effective. Um, but that was something I wasn't self-aware about. I had no idea about that because I'd never been in that situation. Um, the and what I've learned so many lessons the hard way. I've probably made every mistake there is to make. But let's talk about leadership and team management for a bit, if that's okay. But I realized that your role as a manager is to organize groups of people to achieve outcomes. Okay, it's not to make people happy. It's not to be liked. Those are side effects. The goal is to create outcomes, and people are not static; they're dynamic. Okay, so I look at job postings on the internet. I'm thinking this is just wrong. You, if you're hiring someone to do just a job, you are missing out on maximizing your return on your investment in hiring them. Okay, and so I developed a philosophy of career arc. Where I really believe in developing talent internally rather than hiring laterally. Um, and so I try and hire for potential, not for current output. Uh, and then training people and showing them the path to success, showing them that if they can create certain consistency of outcome, that will work for them. And it's almost like creating games, like where you're trying to create a rule set where if people play by the rules, they will succeed for themselves, but they'll also succeed for the organization. And if they try and game the game, try and manipulate the game for their own personal outcome, that will also work too. And I can give you an example in portfolio management in a second. But I read two books that had profound influence on how I manage people. The first was Chasing Stars by Professor Boris Groysberg at Harvard Business School. And the insight in that book is that people work in systems. And if you can create a system that maximizes your return on your investment in human capital, you're probably better off than just hiring a lot of human capital and seeing what happens. And he wrote that book, I think, in the late '90s, but it's held up very well. And then the second book I read, I forget who wrote it. It's called Holacracy, Holocracy, Holacracy. And that is the insight in that book is you want to run teams as flat as possible, as non-hierarchical as possible. Because when you impose hierarchy, you provide incentives for people to work for themselves rather than for the outcome that you're trying to create the system for. And this is why titles are bad. Like I fought titles forever. And you really want to, because they give a false sense of security to people and a false sense of expectations, and you should really focus on production, productivity, outcomes, rather than on titles in your organizations. And you shouldn't artificially hold people back. versus relative to what they can produce. So those two books had a profound influence on how I looked at people and teams in the world. And then so I'm sitting there at SAC Capital and I'm running the long short equities business. We had at the time about 70 portfolio teams. And the light bulb went off for me that we were not an asset management business. We were not an investment management business. We were a talent management business. And that my role as the guy running this is to put together a system of the best people, provide them with the best tools in the best processes so that they could play their best game and that would maximize our returns. And that worked out pretty well. The other thing I realized is you don't hire analysts or portfolio managers, you hire humans. And the analysts and portfolio managers are steps in their personal evolution. So I I started hiring from college and training people to be analysts and providing them a career path. You can be an analyst forever, and that's a very good job. Or some people want to be portfolio managers, and some percentage of the analysts could be portfolio managers, so creating that path as well. And I realized my job was capacity production, that we had to manage. In my business, we were managing about $12 billion, and that we were growing 10% a year. So I had to create 10% capacity a year. Plus, we had about 10% people turnover a year. So I had to hire 20% of my capacity base every year. So I spent a lot of time interviewing people, pretty much a third of my time interviewing people. And one of the key lessons I learned, because we were involved in one of the largest insider trading scandals in history, and we almost didn't come back from that experience. And the U.S. District Attorney got on national television and said that SAC Capital was a magnet for cheaters. And well, that's me. Like, am I a magnet for cheaters? Like, is that what my professional career has been? And it's not, and it wasn't. And how do I make sure that we are never in that situation again? How do I make sure that we don't hire unethical people? Very difficult to do. And I spent about a year with forensic psychiatrists, and trying. How do you create a hiring system where you screen out unethical people? And I didn't really get much satisfaction except this concept of internal versus external locus of control, which I think is a really critical lesson. And the U.S. Marine Corps actually has put out some stuff on this. And we're all on the spectrum of internal versus external locus of control. External locus of control people are people who act in the world, and the world just does stuff to them, and they have no control over it. So they have an excuse for everything. Like, it was raining, I couldn't get a cab, so I was late to the meeting. They can rationalize their behavior. They often play themselves as victim of circumstances. You want to avoid people like that. The other end of the spectrum is internal locus control, which is I make a decision, it has an impact on the world, and then I have the feedback loop and I learn from that. Well, that's a better type of person. It's very hard to interview for that. You can do it better in reference checks, but there are questions you can ask during the interview process to kind of separate things out. And that worked out very well for us. And so I created a system where we could take human beings as the raw material, put them through the system, teach them everything we had learned about success and failure, but and then kind of let them play within a risk management box to optimize outcomes. And those people have become very successful portfolio managers in the world. So, some people figure it out on their own. Some people can accelerate their career development with some coaching. And I like to think that I was pretty good at that.
Wow, that's a lot of great insights and lessons. And this external versus internal um, separation. It's something that I am really interested in myself. I started thinking about that and learning about separating what's outside of your control versus what's in your control. This uh, I was reading some stuff on Navy SEALs and how they deal with high stakes situations and how you want to take one thing at a time. Think what you can do to get yourself closer to your objective. So that's very interesting. You know, um, I'm curious to learn your about your personal experience after that scandal on the personal level. How did you recover mentally? Because that's tough. It's as high stakes as it gets on the getting onto the national television and
Yeah,
going through that.
that's a great point, Danny. And it was very emotionally trying for me, right? Because I was in a leadership role at a firm that had been accused of a crime, and I always saw myself as one of the good guys. But it was very prominent. There's a TV series inspired by this called Billions. Apparently, I'm Wags in that show, and it was hard on my family. It was hard on my children. They got disinvited from birthday parties, like we were social pariahs for a while. Um, and um, but I stayed at SAC because I knew that I had done nothing wrong. I was pretty convinced that our principal had done nothing wrong. And I looked around the floor at the people who worked there, and I had hired them. Like, I couldn't abandon them in a crisis. And we came through that. And today, SAC, they went through a period as a family office, and I was relaunched as a hedge fund. I helped lead that process. Changed the brand, rebranded as Point 72, and currently it's bigger and better than it's ever been. It's 26 billion, right? So we went through the fire, and we emerged stronger for that. And the last compliance issue at SAC was in 2009. Like a long time ago. And I was part of the management team that the SEC wanted to stay at SAC to, uh, you know, make sure that we put in ironclad processes. And so that, I'm very proud of how we turned that around.
Yep, yep. Well,
But
you
again,
had
it's you in a crisis, it's fight or flight, right? And I think flight is generally not the right response. And that's an external locus of control response, right? And fight is an internal locus of control response. And I like to see myself as on the internal locus end of the spectrum.
definitely. Oh, you have a lot of fascinating stories to share, to dive deep into, as well as lessons. That's why I want to ask you, what would be your top advice to, say, 20-year-olds, ambitious young boys and girls, men and women who
Mhm.
are interested in going into this world of finance, or generally being entrepreneur, or
Yeah. So
starting a
so I
business?
have a I have a mantra that I've taken from a Spanish poet, Antonio Machado, and he has a line in one of his poems that says, "Caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar." And that translates into, or I translate that into, traveler, there is no road. You make the road as you travel or as you go. And um, so you're the boss of you. You're responsible for the outcomes that happen in your life. Do it purposefully. Don't be afraid. Uh, So I worked for one of the greatest investors of all time, Steve Cohen, and I watched him, and I watched him ask people three questions. What are your goals? What's keeping you from achieving your goals? And um, what are you afraid of? Right? Those are very powerful questions. And when we're talking about goals, the goals aren't like the more quantification you can put around the goal, the more actionability around the goal, the more likely you are to achieve it. When I used to be in the trucking industry. I was a trucking industry analyst, freight analyst. And there's a very famous trucking company in the United States called JB Hunt. And so, JB was a good old boy from Arkansas, wore $ gold cufflinks, but I learned a lot from that guy. And he took out a card. He had it on an index card, and he showed me, Perry, the reason this company is so successful is I wrote down $1 billion on this card 20 years ago. I said, within 20 years, I'm going to have $1 billion revenue trucking company. And he did. And everything he did worked back from that goal. The second question of what's holding you back, I think that's a really powerful question, because it implies that there really isn't anything holding you back. You're holding yourself back. That you should identify the bottlenecks, identify the blockages that prevent you from achieving your goal, and then work through them. Get over, through, under, around the wall. Don't just accept things. Figure out ways around them. And then the third question, what are you afraid of, is it doesn't necessarily follow from those other two questions, right? But the implication is your fear of failure is holding you back from succeeding. That your people don't take action because they're afraid of looking stupid, of failing, of embarrassing themselves, of being wrong, and that those fears are not useful. That you should put aside those fears and just do things and take action. And I'll just give you a concrete example of how I've applied that to my life. Okay, so MITS Capital, we have some specific goals about what we're trying to build MITS Capital into. I'm not going to share all those on a podcast, but there's a lot of blockages. There's a war in Ukraine. There were export controls, currency control. So how do we identify what these blockages are and work through them or around them? And that's what we've done, and we've done it pretty successfully. In a year, we've accomplished quite a bit. And then am I afraid of? I'm not afraid. Okay. And that's what I learned from Steve Cohen is I'm not afraid. I knew nothing about Ukraine. I knew nothing about the defense industry. I knew nothing about venture capital. Okay. But I know people. I know how to organize people to achieve outcomes. I know how to manage risk. And that's what we've done. And people create value, right? So you want to surround yourself and work with the highest quality people you can. And I've been very fortunate in that I have two Ukrainian patriots who work with me, who really were all on board with the same mission. And they are just as committed to this as me, and maybe more, right? Because it's their country, it's their future that we're trying to secure. So we're building the system to create good outcomes. And we take that down to our portfolio company level. Like, we're not just passive investors in these companies. They are our family. They are our children. We are heavily committed to the success of every company that we admit into the accelerator program. It's not just, let's just put, come on, take some classes, here's some money, hope it works out for you. No, we try and actively help them with customers, with production, with dealing with the government. And it's a whole ecosystem that we're trying to create.
Got it. Got it. This framework on how to achieve your goals, these three questions that you shared, um, I I totally resonate with that on the personal level. I also want to comment a little bit on that, just to share a little bit of my story. Um, since I remember myself, I was always obsessed with coming to America, building my life here. And to me, the reason why I achieved a lot of my goals in life was because I couldn't see myself doing anything else. And as I said, I found ways, the external factors might be crazy, navigating this current immigration uncertainty or
Mm-hmm.
wars or whatever it is. There is always a way if you keep pushing, if you uh, persevere and just keep at it. And to me, on the personal level, I just found this way of getting there by first identifying what I truly want. For example, I have clear goals for the next 5, 10 years that come from the deepest part of my heart, of my soul, what I want. I want to live in this region. I want to have family. I also have some political ambitions here in the US. That's what I want to do. Now, how to get there? This is my framework. These are some strategies. And this has worked for me, but on the personal level, it's much easier when you're obsessed with it, when you don't see yourself doing anything else. But the framework itself that you're shared, it's definitely something that I apply because, well, I want to get there. So
Mm-hmm.
I need to find a way to make it happen.
Absolutely. And uh, when one of the biggest decisions you're going to make in your life is who's your life partner, right? Who you choose to build a life with, and you want to make sure that they're on board with your program, right? Because if they don't agree with your goals, it's not going to work out very well. And um, but you have to support their goals as well, right? So when you have a family, it's not just about you, right? It's about you, your partner, your children, and how you create the best system for them. But remember, your kids, that period of life is a 20 to 25 year period of your 95-year life, right? So um, a lot of things are going to happen over the course of your life, and you're going to have to be focused yet flexible. There's a famous battle, the Battle of Cannae in Hannibal when he invaded Rome. Uh, where he had a strategy, and that to defeat the Romans, and then the Romans came in a totally different way than he anticipated, and he had to adapt to that, and he did, and he won that battle. But that concept that man plans, God laughs, right? You have to have a plan, but you also have to have an ability to pivot, to take a hit, to come back from adversity. And you can apply this to nations. I mean, this is what's going on to Ukraine right now. Ukraine is on a path to becoming integrated with Europe, to leaving the Euro-Asian system for the European system. It's not a linear path. It's got its up and down. This war is a crisis of epic proportions, but it's going to build a stronger country, and it's going to it's Ukraine before the war. I didn't find a lot of Ukrainians who were proud of the Ukrainian government, right? And even today, maybe Ukrainians aren't as proud of the government or the institutions, but they're proud of their country, and they're proud of their resistance, and they're increasingly proud of their culture and their language. And so this war is forging a new Ukraine. And that is, Rahm Emanuel is famous for saying, never waste a crisis, right? This is the crisis that Ukraine cannot waste and cannot lose. And Ukraine will come out of this a stronger nation, and will be on a path to be fully integrated into Europe in the way that Poland was, after Poland was integrated into Europe, right? And Ukraine cannot lose sight of this goal.
Yep, yep. Well, it's a shame we need to end the podcast soon. But the last thing I wanted to share that I completely resonate with this idea of taking the hit and forging yourself into someone stronger, either on the personal level or
Yes.
even the national level, because life will always throw curveballs, and it's expected that you're gonna have setbacks. You'll have detours, roadblocks, but it's your job to find a way to overcome that, because this is what you have to expect, and then you only have yourself to evolve, to find a way out, to find a new path or even a new goal if one door closes. So that's definitely a philosophy that I completely agree with.
Focused yet flexible. Yes. Mhm.
Um, well, it was an honor to host you today, Perry. Thank you for sharing everything you did. I'll put the links into all of your ventures down in the description.
Oh, great.
Um, yeah, and yeah, thanks again for coming.
Thank you, Danny. Be well. Slava Ukraini.